That's hot. Why did I think that was a good idea? That was just boiling water. I'm really loving wearing hats when I don't feel like styling my hair at all. Every time I wear this hat, I think of this scene in New Girl.
I like how it's not a team or a logo, it's just blue.
Still too soon. 30 seconds have passed. When will I learn? So I know I can get pretty easily overstimulated and overwhelmed, and I know a lot of you can relate to this. So I just wanted to give a couple pieces of advice and tips for how to make knitting more enjoyable if you're someone that gets overstimulated and overwhelmed. These are two different things that I am combining into the same video since they relate and intertwine so much. So to me, overstimulation is when a person's senses take in more information than their brain can effectively process. This can be physical, usually it's like sounds in your environment and the feeling of like your clothes, or it can be mental where you're taking in too much mental information. To me, overwhelm I see as a mental saturation point where you feel like you have too much going on and you cannot possibly take in and handle more information and more decisions. Tip number 1 is to find a yarn that you like and stick with it. You do not have to play around and try all these different yarns if you've already found ones that you like. I highly recommend that you check out my video, Yarn for Sensitive Skin. I will have it linked at the end of this video, so you can just click right onto that. There's really good information in that video and in the comment section of people offering recommendations. You're gonna want yarn that is both comfortable to work with, so that means something that's not really dense and splitty and overly fluffy, and then also something, if it's a wearable item, something that's gonna feel good on your body while wearing it. So something that's not too hot and not too itchy or rough. In general, yarns that tend to be better for people with sensory issues tend to be cotton merino blends, extra fine merino, and like soft cotton linen blends. I would avoid yarns like alpaca and mohair, really rustic wool, like thick, dry, dense cotton, like super plasticky yarn, and anything that's described as splitty. So if you're buying yarn online, look at the comments, look at the feedback, and see if people describe it as being splitty, because that can be really frustrating for a lot of people. 2 is to limit your color palette. This can really help with decision fatigue. I've mentioned this before, but I have a color palette that I use, and if I'm introducing anything to my wardrobe, I try to make sure that it fits within this color palette. Of course, we have free will, so I can stick outside of this if I really love something, but for the most part, I like to stick with this, and it makes decision making a lot easier. And I like that I've started applying that to yarn as well, and ensuring the yarn I buy is also sticking to this color palette, because I prefer making a lot of wearables and items that are going to fit in my wardrobe, so I want them to make sense. To me, the fewer decisions I have to make and the less critical thinking I have to do, the less I get overwhelmed. For my sensory friends, if you get visually overwhelmed a lot, I would avoid highly variegated yarns. Anything like super marled, or like when you get the hank of yarn with like a ton of different colors in it, it can be visually overstimulating to just look at for some people. And then also sticking to maybe a lighter color palette as well, because that can put less strain on your eyes if that's a concern for you. To prevent overwhelm, I would avoid doing a lot of color changes, especially if you don't like weaving in ends. And if you're wanting some level of interest, maybe doing a simple stripe repeat where you're doing a couple rows or rounds and switching colors, because usually with that you can carry the yarn with you and you don't have to weave in all the ends, but you still have the interest of switching colors. And you also only have to pick 2 colors to do that. 3 is to find your needle size sweet spot. So for physical comfort, a lot of people have their sweet spot. For me, it's 3mm to 5mm is the most comfortable on my hands. And then like 5.5 to 6.5 can also be okay. But anything bigger than that or smaller than that, and my hands tend to hurt quite a bit, especially on the smaller needles. But I know people that they will not go above a 4mm needle because that's just not comfortable in their hands. And for some people, they need the bigger needles in order to feel comfortable while knitting. So experiment, find your sweet spot, and allow yourself to stick with that. Tip number 4 is to have lighter tension or looser tension as you're knitting. This takes some time to work in the muscle memory, but especially if you're a beginner, maybe training yourself from the beginning to maintain a slightly looser gauge, because that can put less strain on your hands physically. And I don't know about you, but when I am stressed, my tension tends to get tighter, and I notice that my fingers feel like they're getting like shredded raw just from moving and working with the yarn so tight. Pairing on to this is like a sub tip that I just want to throw in as many videos as possible because it's my favorite knitting tip. But if you have interchangeable needles, I love using a smaller needle on the left side than the right side. So for me, if I'm knitting in the round, it's really nice. If I need to use a 4mm needle, I like putting a 3mm needle on the left-hand side so that the stitches slide off easier and I'm not fighting the needle. And again, anytime I'm stopping those roadblocks and preventing my hands from like being rubbed raw from forcing the stitches onto the needle so that I can actually knit them, that's gonna make it a lot more enjoyable of an experience. And then it's also helpful if you're working back and forth that on the knit side, you're using the bigger needle, and on the purl side, you're using the smaller needle because purl stitches tend to be looser. This has nothing to do with sensory stuff. It's just a tip I like to throw in. Number 5 is going to be one of the bigger sections because there's lots of little sub pieces of advice under this, but that is to stick with simple patterns, especially one with minimalistic stitch types. So what I mean by minimalistic stitch types is stitch types that involve a lot of repeating. So you're doing the same movements over and over again, and you can get into a flow, and you're not having to check a chart every 2 stitches to be like, okay, am I doing this right? And you can just work through it completely mindlessly. So that tends to be stockinette stitch, garter stitch, any basic ribbing like 1x1, 2x2, 3x3 rib, doing like a moss stitch, a seed stitch, broken rib stitch. These are all pretty simple stitch patterns that you can do and maintain that like mindless knitting. Good projects to work on when you are feeling overwhelmed would be projects that have a simple construction with a lot of repetition involved. So for sweaters, that would look like doing raglans and circular yokes and really sticking to the constructions that you're used to and understand fundamentally, so you don't have to expel as much mental energy. I would avoid projects with really complicated stitch techniques. So doing something where you're switching cables a lot, doing a cable where you're switching the cable type every couple stitches, that can get really overwhelming. I would also avoid projects that require a very specific fit. So to me, that would be socks, hats, and fitted tops. Only because if you're overwhelmed, like feeling the pressure to really nail the fit on something can be really tough. And sometimes you just need the win of doing looser fitting items, or items where you can get away with not doing them perfectly or not having your gauge be absolutely flawless. Good projects for overstimulation would be loose fitting garments, but ones that don't fall off your body. In fact, I would go on Ravelry before you make a cardigan to look at the projects people have done and see their notes, because for some cardigan patterns, it's an issue for people that the cardigan will always be sliding in a certain direction on their body, and they'll have to constantly be adjusting it. So checking the pattern and just reading through the comments to make sure that that doesn't really happen with people and they feel comfortable wearing it. Obviously avoiding anything that's going to be overly tight, and then sticking to areas of the body that really aren't overly sensitive. That could look like doing earmuffs instead of hats, because I know for a lot of people, especially me too, sometimes my forehead can be really sensitive, so I just don't want to wear a hat and have that rubbing there. So earmuffs would be a preferred pattern to follow. Doing like a V-neck instead of a crew neck or a mock neck sweater, so you're leaving this really sensitive skin here and just letting it chill and hang out and not be constantly rubbing something against it. And of course, doing non-wearable items like blankets, pillows, bags. I'm trying to think of non-wearables off the top of my head. And the big one that I just want to repeat again and again is just working on projects where you're avoiding sensitive areas of your body. So zipper sweaters are actually really good, because then you can open that up and not have it touching your neck. If you're not always that sensitive in that area, but sometimes you are, having the option to have a zip up is fantastic. For a lot of people, for me especially, I can't have anything tight against my upper arms. I do not want anything touching my underarms or getting close to that or being really tight on the upper portion of my arms. Same with wrists. I don't like anything tight on my wrists. I know a lot of people are the same, but some people also don't want anything really loose and wide that's just flapping around. So just being aware of what sensory issues you have. Anyone that does have clothing sensory issues and you're aware of it, you're usually pretty on top of what does and does not work for you. Specific pattern recommendations that I would give for sweaters, I would recommend the Sibling Sweater by Laura Penrose. I've made this one a couple different times, and it's an easy to follow pattern. It's a easy to understand construction, especially it's the kind of pattern that I can do over and over again because you can add stripes and do it solid, and the stripes keep you engaged, and it's just a nice loose fitting object where you can get away with having a looser tension or just not getting the fit perfect. For vests, I like the Semper Slip Over by the Knit Pro Girl. This is a V-neck slip over. Easy to follow pattern, especially if you're skipping the short rows like I do because I like boxier fits. And if you go for a slightly more oversized fit, I think physically it feels really comfortable. It's an easy pattern to work on. For hats, I like the Small Stupid Hat by Eva Coma. I've never actually heard her name out loud, so you can fully correct me if I'm wrong. She's a YouTube channel. I love her YouTube channel. But the hat is nice for people that have sensory issues with maybe like their forehead or their head, because it's a hat that's intended to wear more like an accessory as opposed to an actual object to heat you on the cold winter days, because it's the hats that go kind of above the ears. I actually really like those. For socks, I like the Smart Heart socks by Kuda Vakika or Veronica Lindberg. I know not everyone likes a heel flap and gusset, but I just personally think that's the most comfortable fit on my foot. And I think the pattern is really easy to follow, and it's just a really good vanilla sock pattern to have on hand. For scarves, I would recommend the Kilometer Scarf by Florence Miller. I've been working on this one, and it is my comfort project right now. I used to think it would be so boring to work on a stockinette stitch scarf in the round and having it be like 10 feet long, but it's really nice when I'm having a bad day or I'm just really overwhelmed or not feeling it to have a project that I can just mindlessly do my knit stitches indefinitely, and it feels like it's never ending, but there's a certain comfort in that for me. And then for mittens, I like the Fire Pit Mitts by Taylor Earl. They're a fingerless glove. There's definitely room for flexibility as far as the fit goes on those, and I like that you can adjust how long you want them to be. So those are specific patterns that I would recommend. And the comment section, the one question I have for the comment section on this video is, do you have any patterns or designers that you would recommend that you think are good patterns for people that don't want to think too much and you just want an easy win maybe, and are keeping sensory issues in mind, something that's going to be really comfortable for you. Tip number 6 is to follow patterns by the same designers. This is nice because you can get used to the designer's tone and the way that they write their patterns so that it makes it a little easier to understand. I've followed a lot of patterns by Veronica Lindberg or Kuda Vakika, and it's nice being able to read her patterns because I understand them really quickly because I know the way she's talking, I know the terms she uses and the way she describes stuff, and it just makes sense to me. There are specific designers that I really like coming back to and I think are easy to follow, but this can be different for everyone. And these are also designers that are well known for having easy to follow, well-written patterns. Keeping in mind, an easy to read pattern means something different to most people, but that would be Veronica Lindberg or Kuda Vakika, Jessie Maid, Lydia Morrow, the Knit Pearl Girl, and Petite Knit. And then just throwing in a crochet one, Tony Lipsy from TL Yarn Crafts. I've been told she writes really easy to read patterns. Number 7 is being mindful of how you're storing your projects. So for me, that means storing each of my projects in a project bag that keeps things cleaned up, you're not losing things, and it's not causing guilt when you're not working on it. I like having my projects in a project bag zipped away, and I put all my project bags in the same basket so that I can still see them, they're right behind you, and I can see my projects, but I can't see the specific ones. So it's nice having the visual reminder of like, oh, I have projects that can be done, but not having to look at the specific project and feel that ping of guilt for not working on it. And then if you really need to be able to visually see your projects, otherwise you'll forget about them because object permanence is such a thing for a lot of people, trying to do that in a corralled space like a cabinet or a basket. Something where you're reducing visual clutter, minimizing the guilt of like seeing your project splayed out and being sad that you're not working on it and having to walk past it 80 times a day. Tip number 8 is to not force it when you're having a bad day. If you aren't in the mood to knit, it is okay to back off for weeks or months. You are likely not a tortured artist that needs to pump out projects to fill up a gallery or meet a certain quota. You should be taking care of yourself, and your knitting should be supporting that, not hindering it. Number 9 is just having 1 or 2 projects going on at the same time, not having too many whips. This is especially true for me. I get very overwhelmed having a lot of whips on the needles at one time. This is even better if you're choosing to have multiple whips, having them be different types of projects so that you can reach for one based on whatever mood you're in. So I like to have a knit project, a crochet project, maybe a sewing project. And then if I do happen to have lots of knitting projects that I'm working on, not having multiple sweaters on the needles at the same time. Instead having maybe a sweater and socks. Making sure there's some level of diversity in my whips basket if I'm choosing to take on multiple whips at the same time. Number 10 is to let go of the pressure of gift knitting. If you are someone that gets overwhelmed by gift knitting, which has been me in the past, I'm definitely not feeling that much pressure about it as much anymore. In fact, I think so many people in my life are almost scared to like have me knit for them because I've talked about how much it overwhelms me. I'm much better with it now. But at the time it was incredibly overwhelming. So I had to say no to everybody because I can't take that on mentally, and I can't handle the burden of it. So if that's you, just letting go of that pressure. It's unnecessary stress in your life that you can let go of. So that's it. This isn't stuff that you absolutely have to do. It's just if you're feeling really overwhelmed and you want your knitting to just be a little bit more simple and a little bit more mindless, these are some pieces of advice that I think are helpful in that arena. And repeating for the comment section, I would personally love to see recommendations for patterns and designers that you would recommend that are easy to follow, require minimal mental energy, and then also patterns that are good for people that maybe have physical sensitivities or get overstimulated by their clothes very easily. If you haven't seen it already, do not forget to check out the Yarn for Sensitive Skin. I think it pairs really well with this video, and I really love the information that people brought to the comment section. Absolutely gold. Have a good day, touch grass, and take a deep breath. I'm going to keep saying that in a lot of videos. We all need some deep breathing. Let's go. Let's do one. We'll have that be the exit of today's video, right? One deep breath. And I would encourage you until the video actually ends, because there's about 20 seconds till the end of the actual video. Take that 20 seconds to keep taking some deep breaths. I'll do the first one with you. Ready? Go.
mis noches